Ugh. These things are like Fort Knox, man. Oh my goodness. Oh, what? Ugh. Holy. It's ridiculous. Come on. You cannot fault Wham Bam for their packaging. Hey guys, welcome back. Today we have the Ender 5 Pro, and we have 5 of the most popular 3D printed upgrades off of Thingiverse. We also have 5 of our most popular purchasable upgrades that people are buying from the store here and installing on their Ender 5 Pros. So stay with us, let's get started. So all of the printable upgrades we've printed out of black PETG. It has high rigidity, little bit of flex, better temperature resistance than something like PLA, and it's less susceptible to creep. These in particular are braces for the cantilevered bed here. So the bed itself is only supported at the back by these bushings. It's cantilevered out from that. If you have a heavy print or you put any kind of force down on here, you can see that the bed is actually flexing down. So to stabilize that and make it more rigid, we have these. They just attach to the bushings on the back and to the bed arms, which is what we'll call them here, with zip ties. So on the top here, there are 3 holes for the zip tie to go through, and then we'll just wrap around that arm, as I mentioned. Ideally, we'd have longer versions of these, the same thickness so that they fit through the holes, but just maybe twice as long would be nice. So I'm gonna have to double these up to make them longer. And on the back, there's 3 channels as well for zip ties, but these ones actually lead through and out the other side. There's no hole at the back for them to come out. And those will just, as I said, attach to the bushings in the back. So each one of these has a little ridge here. This ridge kind of frames it right along the side of the cantilever bed there. So that helps you with your alignment. So that should go like that. And on the back here, there are a couple holes, and that's to just provide clearance for the screws that hold these bushings onto this plate. So those should just kind of slide in there. If for some reason they're not sliding in, your clearance wasn't just quite enough, you can just drill those out. I mean, it's not structural or anything. And in our case, I think it's just gonna be a nice tight press fit, kind of. There, like that. And then we'll start by attaching it to the bed. So as I mentioned, they just slide in these holes, and probably difficult to see. But I'm gonna double it up to give me a little bit extra length. So we'll snug these up like a little bit more once we get them all installed. But that's the general idea. We'll do that 2 more times on this side. And then on the back, slide them through, out the other side, and if we're lucky, this might be long enough for just 1. There we go. So we'll repeat that 2 more times and 2 more times for the bed attachment. And so that's what the back looks like done, all 6, 3 on either side. And then on the side here, I've got the 3 straps attached to the plate there, and there's still clearance for the screws and for the knobs and everything. It's actually quite a nice design, and it's easy on the eyes as well. And most importantly is that it's stiffer than it was before we put on the brackets. So the next one we're going to install is this. And if you have an Ender 3, even an original Ender 3, this is a popular upgrade. It's to cover the electronics on the back of the screen. So if we kind of carefully throw this guy on its front, like so. So this is going to cover the electronics, and there's a circular cutout for the buzzer, and then there's a cutout for the ribbon cable there for the screen. And this just attaches using the 4 bolts that hold this on stock. So with those 4 bolts out, kind of flops around a little bit like this, we're gonna have to take out the ribbon cable, slide the cover on like that, kind of line everything up. And with any luck, these will go right back into the original threaded holes there. I find it easiest to actually press the screws through the holes first before trying to assemble it. And that way we're not sitting there spinning, not realizing the screw's not through the hole. And if you have any little stringy pieces in there, you can just kind of use your tool to scrape them out to make sure that we can get the new bolt through the hole. Okay, so I've kind of pre-threaded those through and they're poked out the other side. And now, slide this over top, take a peek through one of the corners here, and just, once we get the first one kind of threaded in, we can use that to align the rest. Great. So, you know, a little bit more of a finished look when we're done there. All right, so 2 down, 3 to go. This one. So this is something that we've had on the CR10S and many other similar types of printers, strain relief for the bed cable. Now, even though the bed here is not moving in the Y direction, so you don't have that constant bending of the cable going to the heated bed, you know, the bed does move just up and down. There is still the potential for this to fatigue over time as the bed is going up and down. So strain relief is nice, it's easy to do, so why not? For this, we need a 10mm M3 pan head screw and just a standard M3 nut. And it has a captive nut recess in the print itself, so the nut will slide into the print. And on the side of the bed here, where the cable is, there is a small hole right here, and that's what we're gonna bolt this through. So being that the hole is there, this will align like that. There's a little notch here to help you align it with the edge of the bed. And then we'll bolt through that hole and just use 2 zip ties, which it also has little tiny holes in there for the zip ties, to attach the heated bed cable to the strain relief bracket. So I've got the zip ties on there and I got that bolt in there, luckily. So these support arms for the bed should probably have been installed afterwards. This particular model doesn't have any provision to get good access to that hole that we were using to bolt the strain relief bracket to. So luckily I had just enough clearance that I could use the rounded portion of the Allen key instead of the squared off side to get in there on a bit of an angle and still have enough bite to be able to twist that bolt and get it to engage into the nut. So that is one of the benefits of rounded Allen ends. It gives you some degree of freedom as far as the angle that you can go in at. And you know, if you have some good Bondus ones, you can get quite an angle and still have good bite. They're really well designed. Alternatively, I could have taken a blowtorch to this, which is what I would do at home, and just melt a hole on a reasonable angle right through the bracket, right up to that bolt, so that I could get easy access through that melted hole. Definitely, you know, impacts the structural integrity, I guess, a little bit of the bracket itself. It's a really tiny hole. It's probably inconsequential, but it's just something to be aware of. It's definitely messier. It's smelly. So, you know, if you are doing this, make sure you have a provision to get access, or do it before you put on those brackets anyway. So this last piece here is another kind of strain relief. These 2 little notches here press fit onto the spacers that space the wheels out from the back plate of the X carriage. So if we press this down, kind of snaps into place like that. It's not super rigid, to be honest. You know, maybe our clearance is a little bit off there. And then if we just kind of coax these wires here, we might have to move this zip tie somewhere else because it's kind of getting in the way. But we'll be able to zip tie this to this little support bracket. So it does 2 things. It stops that from being a point of fatigue on the wires. And it also keeps this entire assembly kind of up. Especially if you don't have it zip tied to your Bowden tube. Your Bowden tube will likely still stay upright and pretty rigid, but the wires themselves can sag and kind of fall down. So this will stop that from happening. And then the bracket itself has channels for the zip ties to go straight through like that, like the other ones we've seen, and we'll just zip tie those onto there. And like I said, I'm going to remove this zip tie here. So you'll notice that I didn't put the Bowden tube through the first zip tie because there's not enough spacing in the bracket itself to fit both the wire loom and the Bowden tube in there. So I just ran it through the top 2 zip ties, and honestly, I probably could have put the Bowden tube through none of them, and it wouldn't have made any difference. It's most important that we're stopping the strain relief or providing strain relief to the wire loom itself. All right, last but not least, or actually least, the most simple one, this little wheel. It's kind of a movement indicator, if you will. It's got a flat spot on it, and it presses right onto here. Just align the flat spot with the flat spot on the stepper motor, like that. And this just lets you, at a glance, visually see that the stepper motor is moving. And if you have a clog or a jam or something and you're skipping steps, you'll see this kind of twitch like that sometimes if it's jammed. You'll also be able to see it retract. It will go backwards as well. So you can, just at a glance, diagnose some kind of common problems you might run into. So that's some quality of life printable upgrades. Some of them are just visual upgrades, but all printable, very cheap to do. Some of them, I would consider must-haves, strain relief on the cables. That just seems crazy not to have in this day and age, to be honest. And now we have 5, retail or purchasable upgrades. Raspberry Pi 3 or 4 if you want to go crazy. More than enough horsepower in the 3B for things like Octopi, Octoprint, being able to control your printer and send prints to it remotely. Time lapse if you hook up a camera to this. Very, very popular. I myself use Repetier Server mostly. And Repetier Server, there's a distribution for the Raspberry Pi, or you can run it on a full-fledged Linux PC. I think there's even a Windows version as well. But lots of flexibility and experimentation you can do with that. And then board upgrades. Another common upgrade, especially on printers that came with noisy stepper drivers like the A4988s, would be a mainboard swap. One thing it would address is that noise that I mentioned. You also have more smarts in something like the 2209s from Trinamic, and never mind the silence. And there's 32-bit boards instead of your legacy 8-bit board if you have a machine that came with that. So we have a Big Tree Tech, this is the SKR Mini E3. So this is a direct swap board. It's the same form factor as the stock board that's in something like this, except it comes with 2209s. Let me just make sure. Yep, it comes with the TMC 2209 stepper drivers. I myself use the 2209s as well, and I control them through UART. So the parameters of the stepper drivers themselves, like the amperage for them, can be controlled completely through G-code. There's also sensorless homing that you can have configured, and you can monitor their status through G-code as well. So that's kind of cool. So this, as I said, direct swap, pull one out, pull one in, flash it with the firmware with configuration appropriate for this machine, and you're good to go. This also comes with heat sinks, and they have like some little thermal tape on them to attach them to the stepper drivers, just to provide additional cooling, and a micro SD card. Now, the SKR boards like this that are running Marlin 2.0, it's 32-bit, and that SD card is actually where the firmware gets loaded onto. So you can actually just plug in your computer, it shows up as a drive letter, you drag your compiled firmware onto it, and the next time it boots, it loads the firmware. A little bit different than having to kind of flash it in real time with the serial cable connected or the USB cable emulating serial connected. And it comes with a tiny USB cable, and most important, it comes with a dock. If you guys have any Big Tree Tech stuff, you'll know that they're always including these little rubber duckies. So now we've done a board swap, we've got remote control through our home network, through Wi-Fi in that case maybe, and maybe we want to swap the hot end. So there are some direct drive extruders that are basically plug and play. And in this case, we're looking at the Micro Swiss. I myself like direct drive over Bowden. It's just what I'm most comfortable with. I don't like having to compensate for the back pressure that can build up in a Bowden system, especially with a longer Bowden tube, and more of the oozing type scenarios you'll run into. But also, with a Bowden, you have less weight on your hot end, and so therefore less weight on this entire carriage. So you should be able to print at higher speeds with less reduction in quality, meaning less ringing and such, than you would when you start loading all kinds of mass onto the X carriage there. So as I said, this is a direct swap, bolts right on to the original mounting points for the heat sink for the hot end, so that's what that is. It's got this plate that replaces the entire X carriage assembly, and that's where the filament path goes down there. Comes with the tools, all the tools you'll need, the nozzle, all the bolts, little piece of Capricorn tube, the heater block silicone cap, a extension cable for the stepper motor cable, because the extruder stepper motor is back here stationary right now, and now it's going to be attached to this assembly and moving around. So instead of the cable just reaching here, it needs to reach an additional distance. And this just happens to be exactly the distance we need. We would just zip tie it to this assembly there. Comes even with the zip ties. Perfect segue. And a 3D printed little strain relief bracket, so our cables will come up the top like that. And like all Micro-Swiss stuff, they have fantastic instructions on their website for installation. And being that it is a platform-specific direct replacement kit, you don't need to print specific bits for the printer you happen to be installing it for. Everything that you need is here and included. And in this case, this is for any of the Ender 5s. Next, we have the auto bed leveling sensor. This happens to be direct from Creality. It is a BLTouch, like we've seen many, many times on the channel. Only instead of rolling your own, buying the BLTouch, printing the appropriate bracket, getting the extension cable if you happen to need one, this comes with everything that you need. Much like the Micro-Swiss, this is a direct swap kit. I'm not going to open up all the packages, but all the wire extensions that you need, the BLTouch itself, of course. And in this case, it's coming with the breakout board. So in the past, we've actually sliced the ribbon cable and spliced in to steal the beeper wire to control the BLTouch. This actually breaks it out into separate pins, so it's non-destructive, very much plug and play. As I said, with these direct swap kits, you don't need to print or provide really anything. They're just bolt and go. It even comes with a metal bracket for the BLTouch that will mount right to the hot end assembly or the carriage assembly there and provide you a nice rigid mounting point for your BLTouch. And there's nothing stopping you. If you want a different mount of sorts, you can go ahead and print many of the ones that are available. And last but not least, I have a major disdain for these mats. I find that many materials just stick to it too aggressively and end up ruining the mat, or I end up ruining the mat getting the print off of it. I don't typically have a problem with adhesion on glass, on mirror, PEI, Garolite sometimes for my nylon prints, but these things are the bane of my existence. So although this works, if I am able to, I'll spring for something that is spring steel based, like the Wham Bam. So the Wham Bam kit, if we open this guy, they want to make sure that nothing gets damaged in transit, and it's not going to get damaged. So first thing you'll find is a, so first of all, this is called the Wham Bam Flexible Build System. And this comes in a couple different options. You can get it in all kinds of different sizes, and you can get it with different print surfaces. So one of theirs is PEX, and I find that to be a pretty versatile surface, much like PEI, though I find it works better for a wider array of materials for me. And so let's get rid of all this packaging. Here we go. So you have instructions and stickers. Stickers are very important. And then we have a new magnet sheet. So this is a higher temperature magnet than what would come standard here. I would suggest removing the existing magnet and sticking this to the heated build plate itself. It is a little bit thicker as well. It's also labeled Wham Bam. And they have the 3M 468MP, which is a higher temperature. I think it's good for about 120 degrees or so. It's a very aggressive adhesive. So next, we see another 3M sticker on the back of the PEX sheet. It's even labeled here PEX. And so again, 468MP adhesive. And this is to stick it to this metal sheet. So Wham Bam. This is a spring steel sheet. It's very thin and light and allows you to just kind of flex and pop your prints right off of it. You don't need a scraper anymore for sure. And when it's cold, they pop off very easily. In many cases, you don't even need to flex it, to be honest. So you want to make sure that you get this, bubble-free adhered down to the build plate. If you have a bubble in there, you can use like a tiny pin to prick it and let the air out. But if a bubble remains under there, that area is definitely going to be higher, and that will screw with your leveling, and you'll have the nozzle kind of smack into that spot a little bit. So make sure you get that all nice and smooth. And same with the magnet itself. And then the build plate magnetizes on there. It's got little nice pull tabs to peel it off, and then flex and pop your print off. So this is a good system. As I said, the stock system works well enough. Just be careful about items adhering too aggressively to there. And you can already see our purge line has left a mark here, and you can see the outline of one of these prints, which actually might have even been from one of those printable upgrades. But anyway, so that's another option. If you wanted to, by all means, you can use the existing magnetic sheet, until it gives up the ghost or stops kind of holding this down as aggressively, especially if you have warp-prone materials. If you have a weak magnet, it can actually curl the flexible build plate right off, which I have had happen when I was doing a full 300 by 300 box. It actually lifted the edges. So this magnet is, well, it's thicker, first of all. It's much more aggressive than the stock one, but there's no reason you can't use that, right? I almost forgot. Why did we have steel wool? Well, like always, we're going to read the instructions, of course. But this is to slightly mar the surface of the PEX sheet, which gives the material just a little bit more bite. Just like anything, preparation is key, right? You want to sand the surface well to give you something good to adhere to. And so that's what this is for. Just some light swirls, follow the instructions. You can do it without, but if you're having any kind of difficulty, that's kind of a way to refresh this surface here. And this also works for PEI as well. Again, we don't want to overdo it in any of these cases. It's just a light marring of that surface. So there you go. You've got the top 5 most popular printed upgrades for the Ender 5 Pro, and the top 5 retail items that we sell for the Ender 5 Pro. Hopefully you found all of that useful. Remember to like and subscribe and ring the bell to get notified when we upload more videos like the Ender 5 Pro. Thanks for watching. How am I even the f gonna do this? Yeah, what have I done?